Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. Well, I'm flying solo tonight. Josh is in Miami, enjoying the heat and the humidity while I am freezing in the north. But that just means we're going to have a fireside chat. It's me and you from around the world tonight. All right. Before we roll out into the testing arena, I want to remind you that you start your weekend here, but it continues on thewatchbox.com. We've got a new website since November. We have been The Watchbox. Bigger, better, faster, and easier to use. Thewatchbox.com is where I go to shop for watches. And yes, we've got that Master Compressor Extreme Lab up right now with my video. I've also got a comparison of that on my Watchbox Reviews channel. Now, of course, I would be remiss not to start with a wrist shot, and I ended the watch with this year. I may as well start the watch for the new year. So you can see that this is my perpetual calendar Grand Memovox. I'm probably going to be switching up to my Duomet or my Tourbillon for SIHH, but this is one of my favorites because of the combination of color, the mass in the hand, the utility of the perpetual calendar, and of course the convenience of having a portable alarm. And it's the kind of alarm that never offends, because rather than some sort of irritating phone or electronics, it has that wonderful jingle to it. Christmas may be in the rear-view mirror, but Jingle Bells continues on the wrist when you own a Memovox. All right, friends joining us from around the world tonight. Eddie Landsberg, I can see first in the chat box. Santino N, longtime viewer. Noah, Juan Huertas, Edward Ledden, SK, Antonio Macias, Ian Chan, joining us from Singapore. Ian, thank you for getting up early with us tonight. Okay, so I'm going to say, since I shared the watch that you've seen a million times, let me share a memorable moment that I associate with this watch. So I was at SIHH almost exactly 1 year ago, and Walter Lange had just died, and I was wearing this watch, and someone pulled me aside in the Pale Expo, which is the exhibition center where they hold SIHH, and I had no idea who he was. I figured he probably wondered if I picked up something he lost at one of the press events. Anyway, he introduced himself as Adi Soon, editor-in-chief of Revolution magazine in East Asia, and he then showed me his Lange and told me that he bought that Lange 1 after watching my Lange monobrand show that I did on the old Watch You Want channel. And, you know, I gave him my watch to hold and kind of investigate, and he gave me his watch. And it was this incredible moment where I met someone who already knew me and had already explored like entire realms of horology that I had somehow opened up. And this is someone who is deep into the watch industry and, you know, deeply invested in this space that we love so much. And I was his gateway into Lange, and we were talking about that on the day that Walter Lange actually died. So that was probably the most poignant memory I have of this watch. It was part of my introduction to a new friend and a person from the other side of the world who had known me through this channel. So those of you who have come to know me through this channel and continue the journey are going to be happy tonight. We've got quite a few interesting watches, but first remember, thewatchbox.com is not just the place to buy, but also to sell your watch. So definitely check out thewatchbox.com if you're looking to trade in, trade up, move on to a new flame for a new year. Didn't get what you want for the holidays? Get it here. Okay, so this or that. Tonight, it's going to be roll overload. We're doing Rolex because I've been getting questions from a bunch of you for this or that propositions, like why don't you compare these two watches, Tim? Or Tim, which of these two watches would you favor? So I'm actually going to take a this or that that was actually proposed to me by Ralph S., and it's two Rolex watches with 2 time zones each, asking me which would I choose for myself. So the two are the Rolex Explorer 2, 42 millimeters, and the Rolex Gmt Master 2, in this case specifying the steel and the BLNR, the black and the blue bezel. Okay, so here's what they are, and I'm going to make my pick. So Rolex Oyster Perpetual GMT Master 2 116710 BLNR. This watch came out in 2013 and quickly became the GMT, the first ever blue and black bezel combination. It was 40 millimeters in the super case, so bigger than a normal 40. Lug to lug, this one is actually going to measure 51 across the wrist because of the solid end links of the bracelet. 12 millimeters thick, so it's not too thick. It's more broad and hefty. Cerachrom bezel, the first combination, again, of those two colors on one GMT. Bi-directional aviator's bezel. A lot of folks don't realize that until they buy the watch. The bezel turns in both directions because it's used to temporarily gauge a third time zone to find local time at an airport, assuming you set the 24-hour hand to GMT. Now, many names, the Batman, the Black and Blue, the Dark Knight, but remember, it's also available at a small discount with a black bezel. Pricing for this watch, $8,950 for the Black and Blue, $500 less if you're okay going total noir. Now, I will say, caliber 3186 inside is the real deal. In-house 31 jewel Rolex manufacture, 45 to 48 hours. This one's got hacking, free sprung, full balance bridge, very tough, COSC rated Swiss chronometer. Rolex then goes and tests it again as a cased up watch, both this and the Explorer 2, so they're both chronometers as fully cased watches. Still 100-meter water resistant, even though it's a pilot's watch, or at least historically has been. And there's an overcoil, so it doesn't have that gravitationally or positionally induced timing deviation. Okay, advantages over the Explorer 2. Well, it's more compact, it's shorter from lug to lug, and at 40 millimeters, I would say it's more versatile, it's more appropriate for a wrist of my size. So if you've got a smaller wrist, remember, modern Rolex with the solid end links and the super case, they tend to wear about 2 millimeters larger than their rated side. So the 40 wears like a 42, the 42 wears like a 44. Also, temporarily 3 time zones versus the 2 time zones of the Explorer 2. I'm sure for someone out there who's an aviation enthusiast or simply has friends around the world, that could be useful. Also, longer and more intriguing history than the Explorer 2. The Explorer 2 history starts in 1971, and it was really designed for a profession that never really became a thing. Professional cave explorers for energy purposes. So if you're an ice spelunker, cool watch, but the Explorer 2 isn't nearly as romantic as the aviator's timepiece, the Gmt Master, designed for Pan Am pilots in the mid-50s. Okay, resale. There's no getting around this. The Gmt Master 2, especially the BLNR version, still sells for at or above market. We buy that watch pre-owned, we pay about retail for it. If you're going to buy one of these watches today and sell it in the next 2 to 3 years, this is the one to buy to sell. The one to buy to own is going to be the one you love more, but I'm not there yet. Okay, Rolex Oyster Perpetual Explorer 2 216570. This is the 42 millimeter Explorer 2. Came out at Baselworld 2011. And we all collectively kind of paused. Almost like the first Chris Bangle BMW 7 Series, we didn't know quite how we felt about a 42 millimeter super case, which, as I said, kind of wears bigger than a 42. For all intents and purposes, this wears like a 44 millimeter watch. Although 42 millimeters and 12 millimeters thick, it is still a thin timepiece, and admirably so, but 53.5 lug to lug, now we're into 44 millimeter Panerai wrist presence and wrist ergonomics. Okay, but you do have some versatility here. For the same $8,100 US, you can get it with the Steve McQueen black dial. This one's been called the Steve McQueen Tribute unofficially, and the Snow White dial, sometimes known as the Polar. Personally, that's the one to get for me. The black and gold indices on white just sizzles, and you never see this watch. You never see it. I'll get to why that's important in a moment, but just think you're not going to see it around the office. That's the short-term payoff. Okay. Exclusive caliber 3187. That's right, it does have a bigger dual time movement in it, and it's not just a larger caliber. There are some mechanical refinements you don't get in the 3186, most notably Rolex's own shock protection system, and it seems like the farther along the timeline we get, the better finished these Rolex movements are. When you know that they're not designed to be seen, but nevertheless Rolex has been improving them, there is an integrity there, and the more recent the movement, the better the finish. So the 3187, probably a little bit more prim and proper than the 3186, plus there's that in-house shock protection. Now, 45 to 48 hour power reserve, effectively the functional equivalent of the Gmt Master 2's 3186. Auto, overcoil, parachrome, anti-magnetic, very concentric centered beating, so in any position this is a watch that's going to keep COSC time. 100-meter water resistance, so there's no advantage there over the Gmt Master. But what are the advantages? Okay, much more impressive wrist presence. Like I said, the watch feels bigger than 42 and it looks bigger than 42. Which means you've got a legit alternative to some, that's the Polar dial right there, great details. It would be my choice of the two Explorer 2s, but you've got something with the wrist presence of a much more expensive watch. Hublot Big Bang, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore 42 or even 44. This is a way to have the same kind of prestige and, frankly, the same percentage resale value without laying out deep into 5 figures for one of the others. I'll also say this. It's striking and has no GMT equivalent with that polar dial. That is a sizzling look. Even the white dial Milgauss is now gone, so this is a standout watch in Rolex's catalog. And it's the one to own if everyone else in your office already has a Rolex. Plus, because it has a bigger dial, it's less busy. If we can go back to the full frame picture of the white dial Explorer 2 with the snow white dial, because it has a bigger dial, everything can be spread out. The magnifier is less dominant. It's a more elegant watch, so though it's larger, it's a better match for formal attire than a GMT Master. Okay, now here is where I think it has the leg up over the short-term resale value, I should say. It also has a retail advantage. It's a couple of $100 cheaper than the GMT. But I think in the long term, because they're making so few of these compared to the GMTs, this is going to be the one for the guy who buys and holds. If you're looking for a reward watch that you're going to keep forever, or some sort of deluxe graduation watch, either, you know, for a child or a friend or a family member, this is the one that down the line might be 20 years from now a collectible. Whereas we may say of the black and blue GMT, you know, they made 1 million of them, they sold 1 million of them, it was always in demand, and now you have your pick on pre-owned. Who knows? The logic may invert in time. The Explorer 2 may be the buy. So which one do I pick for myself, this or that? Okay, I'm going to say, to be a little bit controversial, I would pick for myself the Polar Explorer 2. I can just barely wear this watch. It's big. My 16-centimeter wrist does not love the super case in a 42, but I'll also say this. This is one of the best Rolex candidates for an aftermarket strap. You throw this on an orange NATO strap or an orange rubber B, all of a sudden you've got something that sizzles. Suddenly much more wearable. It'll also have a lot more character. And there's something about the non-rotating bezel Rolex watches that is a little bit subversive. It's a bit counterculture. And this watch, with its orange cues and its historical throwback qualities, is a little bit postmodernist too, I'm not going to lie. It suits me more in sensibility. I'm not a pilot. I have no need for that rotating bezel, and I love the clean, uncluttered dial of the Polar in 42. That would be my choice, with the note that I would immediately put the bracelet in a box and throw this thing on a strap. Explorer 2, you are my choice for this or that. Thank you guys for proposing this one. All right. So I have a suggestion from Stephen Murphy, get the 16570. That's a great choice. In fact, I would just go out and get the 16550 with the cream dial if I really want a collectible Explorer 2. That transitional still sizzles. Of course, that watch now costs more than a new 216570, possibly twice as much. So sometimes you have to choose your battles, and if I were going Rolex and I'm choosing from those 2 watches proposed, Polar 42. All right, guys, you can stay with me after the broadcast by visiting me on Instagram. I'm active every day, whether I'm broadcasting or not. Tim_Mosso on Instagram is my handle. You're going to get all sorts of fun stuff, and I'm video intensive, just as I am on YouTube. I love to communicate with video on Instagram. I feel like you can say more, you can show more, and I try to keep the gallery fun and frequent. I emphasize the watch, not the wrist, and it's all about the heavy metal. It's not about personalities. It's not about being provocative. If you're looking for a bottle of Courvoisier in a nightclub in Las Vegas with a Ferrari indoors, this is not the Instagram channel for you. If you're all about the watch, you're going to want to watch Tim_Mosso on Instagram. Okay, so let me give some shout outs to those who have joined us. I can see that we've got fries with mayo. Fries with mayo, are you Belgian by any chance? Great combination, and the best, possibly the best snack for watching the 24 hours of Spa-Francorchamps. I have Stephen Murphy, of course, joining us, Yahia Balba, joining us from Egypt. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for staying up late and joining us from Egypt. All right, I can see Peter Kim saying he has smaller wrists than I do. In that case, you're going to want to look at a 40mm Explorer. Maybe that 16550 is for you after all. I can see Carlos Ramirez, a friend from way back down in Miami. I wonder if you're partying with Josh right now. I can see Tim talks about barely being able to wear the Rolex, but he owns the Tides of Time. That's true, it's a 46. But you know what? There's magic in them thar lugs. And the compound titanium steel case just works for me. Actually, that was my last post on my Instagram, my Tides of Time from the Miami days. Okay, Edward Ledden saying he has a 15-centimeter wrist, and Fries with Mayo is indeed from Brussels. Welcome. Welcome from Brussels. Triple D, welcome in Switzerland. He's going to see me at SIHH. Those who are going this year, the 19th is the public day. I hope to see you there. All right, moving on to tonight's program. Comment below if you like, by the way. The fun continues after the broadcast. New watches. We've got nothing but the top shelf tonight. A surprise and a change of pace, Franck Muller with the V50 Vanguard. Okay, Tourbillon minute repeater. Yes, an actual complication for once from the self-styled master of complications. And this one pulls no punches. It's legitimate. Tourbillon minute repeater. Franck Muller created what might have been the first wristwatch tourbillon in 1984, and now the brand of his name, although not of his inspiration or influence these days, has created an intriguing tourbillon in a white gold tonneau case. Big lug-to-lug at 55.9 millimeters, 46 wide, reasonably slim though for what it is, 13.7 thick, skeletonized and exquisitely. And manual wind, this one packs 389 parts, 33 jewels, and a gorgeous flying tourbillon at 6 o'clock. 60-hour power reserve, manually wound. It's a beautiful execution, and you can actually see the logo of the company in the shape of the tourbillon carriage. Now, this is a quirky company. They're going to have their own exhibition that's going to run exactly on the days, the 15th to the 19th of SIHH, but this is going to be the world presentation of high horology, not the Salon International of high horology. The WPHH will run concurrent in Gento, Switzerland, and or maybe Gento, Switzerland, and 15th to 19th, their own separate world unto itself. Price unspecified, but the Vanguard Gravity tourbillon that came out previously retails for $106,000. Sans minute repeater, so this thing is going to cost some serious coin. As ever, contact Franck Muller directly if you're interested. Okay, so I see we have some friends joining us now. Todd Piasecki is back with us saying, Franck is passé yesterday's news that watch is too crammed on the dial. You know what, I'm going to say this. This was one of those hot brands of the 90s and 2000s. I do agree with you, Todd. They need a second act. They've done the tonneau case. They've done the big watch. They've done the world premiere. And they were first, honestly, with the independent horology in the mainstream. But they do need something. Like Bell & Ross, this is a company that was huge about 10 years ago and really needs to find that second gear to move into the second and third decades of the 21st century. I'm with you on that. AH saying, hi Tim, thanks for the Explorer 2 insight. Yes, absolutely. You guys suggest this or that's. Like you can ask questions for Monday Mailbag, but if you throw me a this or that, we can use that on any of my broadcasts. All right, moving through. Will S. is saying he just received his blue dial, blue bezel Super Ocean Heritage 2. He's not a fan of the Shark mesh. That's the Ocean Classic mesh bracelet, guys. It's the twin to the Aero Classic, which is basically the same thing. He's not a fan of the rubber. He needs strap help. I would say in that case, you want to go online, and I would say go with a silicone strap. They only last 2 to 3 years, but for the price, and it's usually 50 to 100, you're getting a quality product. I would say go with an aftermarket silicone strap. You can get them customized. There are many options. And just type in silicone aftermarket strap Breitling. A million things will come up. I'm recommending silicone because it is the softest. It's what you get on a Swatch. It's what you get on a lot of Seiko Prospect divers. And it would be my choice for a custom strap on a Super Ocean Heritage 2. Okay. Also from the top shelf, Blancpain. The Blancpain Villeret. Traditional Chinese calendar. Okay, this is a second act to a watch they first showed us in 2012, which was the Year of the Dragon for Chinese zodiac. This one is platinum, 45 millimeters by 15 millimeters thick. Technically a seriously premature pre-Baselworld piece, but we love it anyway. Grand faux enamel dial, really nicely executed, and with a dial that has this many Chinese character calibrations over many scales, Gregorian and Chinese calendar at the same time, the 45mm case and the big dial really makes sense to avoid the appearance of crowding. Grand faux enamel, beautifully executed with applied white gold indices and numerals. This is a nicely executed watch, and I would say consider how much you're getting with this timepiece. The caliber has 464 parts and 39 jewels. You're getting a 24-hour cycle for the Chinese day, 30-day months under the Chinese calendar. You're getting a 12-month cycle and leap month indicator. You're getting celestial stems, which are 10-year cycles. You're getting the 5 elements within that register that also features the yin-yang, the 12-year Chinese zodiac symbol indicator, and of course you're getting a moon phase, plus the Gregorian calendar 31-day date, and the time of day in conventional civil time. That's a lot. The exclusive caliber 3638 is beautifully executed front and back. That's the ultimate sign of integrity. The parts you can't see are still beautifully finished. This is the kind of thing that shows real integrity. And 7-day power reserve, automatic winding, moves along at a stately 21,600 beat rate. Free-sprung titanium balance. This is a really nice piece. A free-sprung tie balance. You can see the tie balance in black PVD with the gold variable inertia balance blocks recessed to create an aerodynamic balance. Very nice. The precise and modern and rugged way to regulate a traditionally finished watch. That shot also shows how beautifully executed traditional hand-laid Côte de Genève are. You can see how they go from light to dark with a diagonal grain within the lines, plus beautiful mirrored anglage. You get what you pay for with this watch. And what you're going to pay is roughly $86,840 US. 50 pieces. The original 2012 was 20-piece series in platinum. Underlug correctors allow you to correct the complex Chinese calendar indications plus the date. You can see that there are 4 of them. They both prevent you from adjusting the calendar during the danger zone, and they remove the dimple correctors that perforate the sides of conventional calendar watches, creating a much cleaner aesthetic. Also note in that picture a hand-engraved rotor with 1 actual ruby, a Madagascar ruby. It's not a synthetic jewel, inset to match the cabochon crown, also a ruby. This is a beautifully executed hand-finished watch, engraved on the back, grand faux enamel on the front. Less than $90,000. It's not cheap, but I believe that this is realistic pricing, where the amount of labor invested in the watch is reflected in the price. I think Blancpain has done well here. This is a watch that appeals whether you're into Chinese zodiac or not. It's just a beautiful timepiece. There's also a rose version that is unlimited production. All right, guys, so tonight I'm also answering your live questions in the box. Fluffy Kitten is noting a complex Chinese calendar. Impressed? I certainly was. An unconventional and appealing timepiece, I gotta say. Whether you're into the year of the dog or any of the 11 other symbols of the Chinese zodiac, this watch represents all of them on its calendar wheel. Edward Ledden is answering a question asked by Ian originally, which is, should he go with a GMT Master 16700, which was the last of the single time zone 24-hour hand GMT Masters without the independent clutching of the second time zone? This is a watch that was made from roughly 1988 to 1999. So the last of the true GMT Masters with a Pepsi bezel, or should he get the 40mm pre-super case GMT Master 2 16710 in Coke? Now we have advice from Edward Ledden saying he should get a 16710 Pepsi. Okay, since we're going outside the scope of Ian's request, I'm going to suggest he buys a 16760 Sophia Loren Fat Lady Generation 1 GMT Master 2. That's a watch you will buy today and sell for maybe twice the money in 10 to 12 years. A transitional watch, a charming watch, only ever available with the Coke bezel, and only ever available from about 1983 to 1987, early 1988. That would be my choice, but if you're 16700 Pepsi or 16710 Coke, I'd go with the GMT Master 2 Coke, the 16710. That would be my pick. Purely subjective, but you have choices. That's the key, Ian. All right, TD Garage joining us, 1989 OSU, saying the person who buys the Richard Mille is solely the person who buys an RM to show off. Okay, and here's a great question, because A. Wilson is asking, question, best article, who is the person that goes out and buys a pre-owned Richard Mille? Is there a value-seeking Richard Mille type? My best article of the week is coming towards the end of the show. Stay tuned. It's also in the description box below. We got some talking to do about Richard Mille. Whether you buy them for status or substance, this is going to be controversial stuff, and I'm bringing in a perspective from Ariel Adams, who wrote a great article about this. All right. Continuing with new watches, again, from the absolute top of the heap comes Cartier with the Rotonde double tourbillon Mysterieuse Squelette. Okay, 45 millimeters in platinum, another 45 millimeter platinum watch from a high-end manufacturer. Nice and slim at 12.4 for something this complex. Sapphire cabochon crown, a real one. Cartier Fine Watchmaking lives. We had been afraid that they would pretty much pare down their collection to nothing but the $8,000 to $18,000 steel, two-tone, and gold simple watch. There had been rumors out there. I don't think it's disputed that Cartier Fine Watchmaking has been scaled back. Fewer debuts. I think less resources are being allocated. If you're familiar with the work of Carol Forestier-Casapi, who is the head of this program, you're going to be happy to know that they're still working on a limited basis on their ultra haute de gamme watches, and this is a great example. It's a sequel to the first edition that came out in 2013. This is a worthy brand flagship from one of the great names in watchmaking, once considered the king of jewelers and jeweler to kings, with a floating flying tourbillon. Think about that. It's a double-axis tourbillon because it pivots in 60-second cycles on its own axis, and then it makes a 5-minute circuit of that circle in sapphire. It's a sapphire disc at 6 o'clock on the dial. So, yeah, you can really see it. It's a mystery tourbillon inspired by Cartier's famous mystery clocks, which it still offers. There's no clear, visible means of drive to the tourbillon or from the tourbillon. And you have those two separate rotations. Very cool. 30 pieces of this watch being offered on an alligator strap with a white gold clasp, also available with a diamond bezel. The whole dial, and this is what sets this one apart from the 2013 model, the whole dial is hand skeletonized. This is the caliber 9465 MC. It is manually wound, and you can see how the skeletonized plate, it's the base plate of the movement, becomes the set of stylized Roman numerals for the blue broadsword style hands. This is a very cool watch. What does it cost? I'm not sure, but I'm not done telling you what you're getting for your money, your mystery money. This is built by Roger Dubuis in Geneva. In order to attain the Geneva hallmark or the Geneva seal, which this watch has, it has to be built in the city or canton of Genève. And it's manufactured at the Roger Dubuis manufacturer. It's out in Meyrin, which is like an industrial suburb of Geneva. It's where Richemont has its corporate headquarters. Dubuis has its manufacturer. Patek Philippe is not far away. There is the F.P. Journe dial and case factory out there. They're all about 800 feet from each other. So this one's not made at the Cartier La Chaux-de-Fonds manufacturer. Also, a 52-hour manual wind power reserve, completely laid bare. You can see this one on both sides of the case. What does it cost? I'm going to guess, with the original 2013 watch now retailing for $173,000 US, I'm going to say for the luxury of the hand skeletonized caliber, Geneva seal finished, I'm going to guess just under $200,000, but I'll know for sure when I handle the watch at SIHH. Forward your questions, because I'm going to Geneva, guys, and I'm bringing the show with me. All right. So Budget Watch Guy is saying if he could have only one Cartier Roadster Chrono. I love the Roadster Chrono. I think that is the one that got away. That's the watch Cartier should still be making. It's the Cartier that has a transcendent appeal to guys. A brand so often known for quartz watches and ladies' watches, this is one that every guy I know has said they would either like to wear or like to see brought back for their consideration. Cartier, if you're listening, it's in the ballpark for your future watch price target. The $8,000 to $18,000 watch, that's your Roadster. Time only and chronograph. Bring it back. We loved it, and we can love it again. Fall back in love, guys. Let's start the Roadster revival petition right here. Okay. So, Todd Piasecki is saying Cartier is on a roll. They have made some great stuff. There's no doubt. Let's hope they keep it up. Okay. Live questions, I also want to remind you guys that you can comment on the thread below. If you're watching this recorded, I love to comment and follow up over the weekend after This Week in Watches, my Friday show. So definitely sound off in the comment box. Let me know what you're thinking. React to the show or ask questions for episodes to come. That and my Instagram, Tim_Mosso, the best ways to reach me, because I now get so many emails, I literally can't keep up. People around the office get pissed off at me because I just can't keep up with my email anymore. It's like a moving chat box. Guys, I love you, but I can't type that fast and I can't read that fast. All right. So now we have a question from Edward Ledden. Tim, what are the chances of us seeing a steel Pepsi GMT this year? If Rolex rolls over the GMT Master to a new generation, that is, if the watch that we saw in 2005 in gold that later became in 2008 a steel watch, if we see that model family roll over to a new generation, the first model out of the gate, in my opinion, is going to be a steel Coke or a steel Pepsi. It's something that they're going to use to launch the new watch. Now, conventionally, Rolex launches new models with precious metal. We saw it with the Gmt Master 2. We saw it with the current generation GMT Master. We saw it with the first Sub-C. But I do think that given the circumstances of the watch industry today, with the recovery still fragile, and with steel Rolex white hot right now, and the pent-up demand from Rolex basically shipping no watches for the last 3 months of 2017, I think that if we see a new GMT Master 2, an all-new GMT Master 2, at Basel this year, it's going to be a Pepsi or it's going to be a Coke and steel. And if we don't see it this year, wait until we do. That's when we're going to see the Pepsi and the Coke GMT in steel. And here's why. Because of that BLRO, the white gold Pepsi GMT, Rolex basically can't stab its customers in the back. The guys who laid out almost $40,000 for that watch to have the only super case Pepsi are going to get this much respect. Rolex will not stab them in the back by making a current generation GMT Master with the Pepsi bezel in steel. They'll wait for the next generation. That said, I don't know when. The Daytona seems to be the next Rolex that's due for a refresh, as we've had the current generation watch around since 2000, but then again, we've only had the ceramic bezel steel watch, which is back-ordered out to a year, since 2016, so go figure. Okay, so this is a question. Do I think, this is from Stephen Murphy, Tim, do you think the Cartier extra flat in, the drive extra flat in steel is coming? Okay, this year, well I should say last year, 2017, this previous cycle, Cartier launched the drive, previously a neither here nor there watch in their lineup, with a Piaget caliber 430 ultra thin in white gold and rose gold. And immediately everyone said yes. Suddenly the watch made sense. Suddenly the drive had a signature model. Suddenly there was a wait list for that, and Cartier's reps were telling me that they could not get enough of them. So the question becomes, 1 year later, do they make one in steel? I'm going to say no. Until there is no wait list for the gold, I would say they don't do a steel. Will they do a steel? I think so. I think that's right where Cartier wants to price its watches today. That's not an ETA movement in there. It's not the MC 1904. It's a much more expensive Piaget caliber. They have to possibly make their money back on the drive, on the tooling for the drive, before they can go to a steel watch, and probably they'll want to exhaust the waiting list before they step down in price. But I do think we'll see this eventually. If they want to be really provocative, they'll make it in titanium or tantalum. Cartier, you could absolutely use your own chronomètre bleu, and I think a drive in tantalum or titanium could be that watch. Titanium with a salmon dial, slayer. All right, so JBO Surf is saying the Cartier Roadster is only good if Tim can throw it. I'm going to give them a break there. It doesn't have to pass the Tim test. My master compressor Extreme World Alarm is a cut above. So a Richard Mille ARM 27 Nadal, yeah, that has to pass the Tim test. A Glasuta Original Sport Evolution Impact, yeah, that has to pass the Tim test. Cartier, I'm not going to hold you and the Roadster Revival to that standard. All right. So question from Ole, who's asking, Rolex Sub Hulk or a Blancpain 50 Fathoms bathyscaphe, and why? I'm going with the bathyscaphe, absolutely. I'm going with it in blued Ocean Commitment because I love the Ocean Commitment 2 chrono, and that's not an option you get in the Submariner line. There is no Rolex diving chronograph. This is something that Tudor has done in the past, but Rolex has not done. And while I don't love the idea of a diving chronograph because I want to dive with a chronograph, I think the Ocean Commitment 2 bathyscaphe is a stunning watch. It's gorgeous. It has an in-house high-beat, flyback, 50-hour silicone hairspring, free-sprung chronograph movement. And even if I'm just going with a standard bathyscaphe, the one to buy if you want a collectible is the ceramized watch that was made in maybe 100 copies back in 2013. They made a few, they stopped immediately. A super rare watch and one for the collectors to pursue. That would be my choice, above and beyond. If I couldn't have a bathyscaphe chrono Ocean Commitment 2, I'd go with the rare ceramized example with the caliber 1315 inside. It's a better finished watch, it's a more unique watch, it's a technically more interesting watch than the Sub-Hulk. That said, the green of the Sub-Hulk slays me, so it's not an easy decision. I just feel that the Blancpain is more special. It's the one I would buy to own rather than the one you would buy to sell. That would be the Rolex. Okay. So now here's a question from Beauty of Scent, a longtime viewer and a longtime participant in our live chats and broadcasts. Important question for Tim from Watchbox. Why do some high horology pieces still have the lower 21,600 vibration per hour beat rate, also called 3 Hertz? Why do the high horology pieces have that rather than a conventional 28,800, which is what you'll find in most conventional modern movements, or a high beat like an El Primero 36,000, or an exceptionally high beat like a Breguet Type 22 or Classique Chronometry at 72,000 vibrations per hour? Well, here's why. Because many times high horology movements will be built for long power reserves, and when you reduce the oscillation rate, you get a longer power reserve. Look what happened when ETA took the 2824 and they created the H80 for Hamilton, for example, for Mito. They created that a Bausch that they basically spread across most of their entry-level lines that gave entry-level models an impressive 80-hour power reserve. So what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of high horology pieces have an impressive power reserve, and a lower beat rate is an easy way to get that. Also, a lot of high horology pieces use the slower beat rate in conjunction with a bigger balance wheel. There are 2 ways to get greater resistance to induced timing deviation. You can give your balance wheel a bigger moment of inertia to fight sudden motions of the wrist and maintain its beat rate, its consistency, its isochronism, or you can make the balance smaller and speed it up. Now, in a perfect world where you have a watch with a huge mainspring barrel, you'd have a huge balance operating at a high rate, but usually the choice is one or the other. So don't be deceived by the fact that a lower beat rate is used in a high-end movement. Something like an Audemars Piguet 3120, that's a 21.6 beat rate movement, also has a free-sprung balance with a gyromax mechanism. Like Patek Philippe, this is a very precise setting system that can allow it to take and hold a precise regulation, and when used in conjunction with other features, oftentimes Patek used a Breguet overcoil, you can make up for the fact that the movement has a slower beat rate. A Breguet overcoil, for instance, gives you concentric beating of the hairspring, so you get a lot of the advantages of a tourbillon. That is, in any position with respect to gravity, you're going to get a similar beat and isochronism from the balance. And finally, especially with tourbillon watches that operate at 21.6, yes, a tourbillon is a power-hungry complication, but there's also a desire to slow down the movement. Lange uses an 18,000 vibration per hour beat rate in the datograph, for example. Many tourbillon use a 21.6 or an 18,000 beat rate because they want you to be able to see the escapement and the balance in action. It's a matter of the romance of the movement and making that more accessible and more visceral and more apparent. And that's often why a lower beat rate is used on high horology complications, especially tourbillon, especially flying tourbillon. Okay. So now, question from Ole asking, do you think the Zenith El Primero Chronomaster XXT Open will gain in value? 10, 20 years down the road, I think it'll be one of the best remembered watches from the Terry Nataf era, that is Zenith in the mid-2000s, but I don't think in the short term you're going to see that watch gain any value. I think it's just a great buy and a great looking watch with an innovative dial design that was hugely influential. Okay. So now we come to something that was mentioned earlier in the show, which is the best article of the week. Now, for me, the best article, which I like to call out each week on this show, was written by Ariel Adams of Ablogtowatch for this week. Why Richard Mille watches are so expensive. Pretty simple proposition, complex reasoning. Now, this is a bit of an epic. Ariel writing a 3-page comprehensive exposition that's already garnered over 250 reader comments. Guys, this is a provocative read. Now, it's illustrated with superb original photography, as are so many articles on Ablogtowatch. This is one of the photos. Again, you really get your money's worth when you read one of these Ablogtowatch articles. But here's the thing, the defining quotes are going to inflame passions. Defining quotes from this article. That's more imagery from the article, gives you the idea and the persona that Richard Mille tries to assume. Okay, Ariel saying, I understand that Richard Mille watch pricing is actually more of an exclusionary tactic than a presentation of production costs and overhead plus a reasonable profit margin. In other words, they're priced as they are, high, to make them exclusive and to exclude customers who do not have the money, rather than pricing the watch as the cost of production plus a reasonable profit margin. He continues, there is no faster way to disillusion a dedicated luxury customer than by allowing them to see their high-priced status item on the wrist of someone who can't afford as much as they do. Not really my idea of luxury watches, not how I envision this world and this hobby, but there's definitely some truth to this. Now, he continues, in a very real sense, Richard Mille has protected the ability for its clients to say explicitly or implicitly, by wearing this watch, I had to spend, and thus can afford for status items, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Okay. This isn't a revolutionary revelation, but it seems awfully raw and provocative, inflammatory, even borderline offensive when written in plain terms. It's something we understand, but I would think even those who do buy Richard Mille watches for these reasons probably don't like to see it verbalized this way. It's a little bit uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie. And I also think when it's spoken this way, it becomes a little bit repulsive to the average hobbyist in the space who probably doesn't identify with this notion at all. Okay. This is something that lurks comfortably below the surface of direct conversation until it broaches the surface. Both true and cringeworthy, but it's not exclusive to Richard Mille or the boutique watch community. I had a very well-known enthusiast in the vintage space who's a well-known writer tell me that nothing burns a vintage watch collector, a high-end vintage collector, more than seeing the same vintage Hoyer or Rolex or Gallet or Universal Genève on the wrist of someone else in the same room. I would say the same probably applies to high rollers who buy expensive watches. I don't love this idea of the high-end watch market, and I'm sure Richard Mille would not phrase its core appeal like this. But that's not the end of Ariel's argument or the ultimate focus of his article. His conclusion, he says, my favorite argument to make in defense of Richard Mille's pricing is that, regardless of the pricing, the strategy is that you can't get the same thing for less money. Okay, this is where Ariel ultimately goes. Now, whether you agree with him or not, you must at least stop and think about his argument, scour your mental resources to affirm or dispute his case. And after scouring, come to grips with the reality of his assessment of status symbology. Okay, RM rivals, Richard Mille rivals do exist, and we can name some of them very quickly, many of which offer the same experience for less or the same money. Jaeger-LeCoultre, the JLC Extreme Lab 2. Tell me this watch doesn't scream Richard Mille, but for $50,000 with over 500 pieces in a movement that I spent about 20 minutes describing in a comparison video, this absolutely goes toe-to-toe on a technical level while giving you the same look, a large amount of exclusivity. Remember, Richard Mille is making thousands of watches now, 3,500 to 4,000 a year. We're not talking FP Journe and 700 to 800 watches. I think you get the same experience and look and exclusivity with this JLC for probably a fifth of what RM would charge for the same features and the same look. Roger Dubuis with the Couture. Here's a company that's effectively become Richemont's Richard Mille killer, and they're making about the same amount of watches, 3,500 to 5,000. Now, you get 4 balances with differential gearing for over $1 million with a unique alloy, a completely revealed hundreds and hundreds of component Geneva seal movement. This is an innovative watch that absolutely gives you the same experience and the same look and the same exclusivity. They made less than 10 of these. This is the Cobalt Micro Melt version of the Couture. Does it look exactly like a Richard Mille? No, but I think it has the same sensibility about it. And then there's the Aventador S, which just came out. If this thing doesn't have Richard Mille written all over it, I don't know what does. A racing machine for your wrist, guys? Yeah, I think they're pitching it that way. A sports car for your wrist, high technology, a machine that you can see the engine block on your forearm. It's all of that. It gives you 2 of the balances of the Couture, differentially geared, and a 6-figure price with an oversized, skeletonized movement. Guys, yes, you can get the same thing elsewhere. And finally, HYT-H2. Here's another watch that appeals to the same technophile sensibility as Richard Mille. Now, this one costs well into 6 figures, no doubt there. I want to say about $190,000. And not only that, it's built by Audemars Piguet Reynaud et Papy, the same people who build and finish the high-end Richard Mille watches. So when Ariel says there's no flaws in the finishing of a complicated Richard Mille, well, the same can be said of the HYT, made by the same folks and finished to the same degree, often sold for the same price. This is the HYT H2 tradition. But I think this is skirting the issue. By the way, Dave Bethune, am I wrong? Arguably blows them all away, more innovative and more exclusive, perhaps, than any of the companies I just mentioned, and the one that truly does steal my heart, or at least wrestle for it with JLC. Okay, but do these plausible alternatives offer an exact Richard Mille surrogate status, experience, and product quality? I'll give Ariel the last word, since he's not here to speak his mind, so he can't defend his argument. And believe me, the guy's smart, and he's an attorney. He knows how to defend his argument. He's the last person on earth I would stand up as a straw man, and his argument carries a lot of validity. So in his own words, in conclusion, it matters little whether Richard Mille watches need to be priced where they are. The fact remains that you simply cannot get the precise RM experience in any lesser priced product, his opinion, and RM customers do benefit from knowing that they aren't likely to see someone else out there in the world with the same watch who isn't equally successful as they are. Okay, the full-blown snob appeal argument. The snob appeal argument is what it is. I think a person who thinks that way can't be persuaded otherwise. And yes, Richard Mille absolutely justifies its price on that basis. It's a prodigious status symbol, and they have the celebrity ambassadors to hammer that home, even for people who know nothing about watches. Whether you can't get the same mechanical experience, innovation, and finish, that I heavily dispute. So on the snob appeal, Ariel's absolutely right. Mechanical surrogates, yes, I do think there are rivals, and I think some of them charge less money. Okay, Sam W124 saying, sadly, I don't think these watches compete with the RMs. They don't have the same cachet that RM does. The people buying these watches are willing to pay the premium for a Richard Mille watch. This is true, and it's not just the status symbol on your wrist. It's also the lifestyle. It's the $1 million yacht. It's the Formula One car and driver that promotes the brand. It's the superstar tennis player. It's the idea of wearing a $1 million watch during high-impact sports. And as Ariel says in the article, it's also the idea of buying the man himself. Richard Mille is a businessman, not a watchmaker, not an engineer. So you're buying into the luxury lifestyle that he leads. He goes to the F1 race. He sails on the racing yacht. He lives the luxury lifestyle. His place of residence is a magnificent abode in the French countryside. He owns a chateau. So you're buying into the image lived by the man on the dial, which is seamless. The man is the brand is the man, and the lifestyle is the one they want to sell. There's some authenticity there. You buy Richard Mille when you buy an RM, you buy FP Journe when you buy an FP Journe, and to an extent, you buy an interesting hybrid of the two of them. Their backstories kind of combine with Laurent Ferrier, a race car driver and car enthusiast who also follows the traditions of old school watch finishing and old school Geneva watch finish. Okay. I can see that JBO Surf saying, Tim, what about high-end MB&F as a Mille competitor? I think so, and I wanted to throw them in there. If you look at that HM7 Aquapod, inspired by all manner of organic creatures, jellyfish, Portuguese man-of-war, submersibles, and diving bells. With the level of finish, complication, and the six-figure price tag, plus the outlandish design and the movement right up front, you don't even have to flip the watch, I would say they're a viable competitor. There are many, many, many we could go into, and they're from all over the world. But I do think I was just trying to give a sampler of watches and brands that could be considered alternatives on a technical, status, and price basis. Also, I can see we have a question. Let me see if I can go back and find it. Okay, so Hisham Habib is asking questions saying he is interested in buying a chrono. Okay, going back. Could anyone give him, okay, a review of his collection? He owns a Gmt Master 2 Rolex Explorer 214270 and a stainless steel Datejust with a white gold bezel, Omega 300 meter, and a Nomos Orion. That's a great and well-rounded collection. I would say since you don't have a chrono, those who are saying go chrono definitely have a point. I would look for something like a Parmigiani Tonda Metrograph. It's a watch that sells for about $11,500 new. You can pick it up for maybe 65, 70% of that pre-owned. Then you get independent horology, you get a chronograph, you get something that looks like nothing else. You've got a lot of mainstream watches in the collection, so I would look to add something from a bit off the beaten path. The chrono is a good suggestion. I would also say consider something like a MIH watch, which is both an annual calendar and a chronograph, and independent horology, and priced below $10,000 US. It's got a phenomenal background with concept by Ludwig Oxlin and design of the calendar by him, and the production engineering actually executed by Paul Gerber of the AHCI. That would be a direction I think you could go affordably, and again, you get that independent horology off the beaten path, exclusivity, uniqueness, but with zero pretense. It's a minimalist design, so it's also a modernist take on the traditional luxury watch. I would also say that if you want to stay with mainstream brands, there have been some wacky watches from mainstream brands. The Omega Seamaster 300 meter Apnea is the craziest chronograph Omega ever made. From 2003, it was a Jacques Mayol tribute. If you want to stay within the mainstream brands, but get something that you're never going to see again, get either the silver or the black dial Apnea chronograph. Finally, I love JLC, so I got to suggest an Amvox 2 chronograph, possibly the most unique chrono other than the Apnea that you can get for less than $10,000. Manufacture movement. Revolutionary design. Again, another JLC that could say Richard Mille on the dial, and it would have cost 5 times as much. Still unique, a pusherless chronograph with an articulated case. It hasn't aged as a co-branded watch. That is, the JLC aspect comes to the fore. The Aston Martin branding is very discreet, so you don't have to buy into the car to buy into the watch. That would be my ultimate recommendation if you want a truly cool chronograph for under 10 grand to expand your collection. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I see Clive is saying he already has an Apnea. Man after my own heart. Thank you for joining me. Remember, the fun continues on my Instagram after the broadcast, Tim_Mosso on Instagram. I love video. I love to update daily. Comment on the day's thread, the day's photo. I can almost always guarantee you a response. And remember, visit our new website at thewatchbox.com. Guys, it is freezing here in Philly. Josh is down in Miami. I could not be more jealous. If you're out there where it's warm like my friend Josh, Godspeed, man. You're living the life. To all my friends here, stay warm, stay safe, have fun, enjoy your weekend. This is Watchbox, and thanks for logging on.